Or Thursday.
Hello.
I'm
Savannah.
I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof. One day I'm going to figure out something to say consistently.
I mean, doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, I can at least get the day right. I mean, it's Saturday for us, but it's Thursday for you guys. Hopefully you're listening on Thursday, but you're probably not. You can listen any day of the week that you'd like.
We'll take listens any day.
We will. I was just trying to explain to Elysia who the Migos are.
I have no idea.
Stay tuned on Patreon because I'm going to show her Migos and you're going to listen to her.
My reaction.
You're going to see her reaction to the Migos.
Nice. Oh, I have something to share. Should we share this here or Patreon? No, let's share it here.
Okay.
It's about Patreon.
Okay.
See, it's a trade-off.
It is a trade-off.
Because I don't know who this rap group is, but Savannah sent me a text when she was preparing, setting up our Patreon site and said, oh, I did a cute thing with our audio video for the outtakes and it has a VHS tape on it. And then when I went to the Patreon page and looked at it, it was delightful. I don't know what else to say. It was delightful because it was not, in fact, a VHS tape. It was a cassette tape in a Walkman.
And I thought,
but just in the window part. So those are, all us old.
I didn't look at it very closely and I just thought it was a VHS tape. And I was like, yeah, that works. It's cute.
I mean, it still works because it is just an audio.
No, it actually works better
but
as
yes,
a Walkman than it does as a VHS tape.
I just thought, God, I'm old. I have to explain to this 20-something what a cassette tape is.
I know what a cassette tape is. I just didn't know what it looked like. I mean, I know what a cassette tape looks like. I just feel like I didn't notice the difference. I wasn't
fabulous.
looking. Okay, I was busy. Listen,
Linda.
It's
fine. It was wonderful. It made my day.
It was funny.
The highlight of my day.
It was good. Yeah.
Even though it also made me feel old, it was hilarious. I loved it.
Well,
so I thought I'd share.
There we go. Thank you to everybody that joined our Patreon.
Yes, thank you.
You guys are awesome. And stay tuned because, again, like I said, I'm going to show Elysia the Migos, so you'll have that to look forward to. This week, I don't think we have any upfront business.
Nope.
So, yeah, I think we can jump right in.
Sounds good.
We have another Florida case today. This was not listener recommended. This was Savannah recommended. I wanted to, so I did it. This case tends to kind of get forgotten about because it was really close to the Casey Anthony trial. And it happened in the same county. And it happened in the same courtroom as the Casey Anthony trial. So, we will talk at the end of the episode about how the two are kind of connected in my opinion.
Okay.
But throughout the episode, I want you, Elysia, and you as the listeners to keep a really open mind. I am going to try and tell this tale as neutrally as possible. I am going to try and be Switzerland because a lot of the coverage of this case is biased one way or the other.
Okay.
And if we want to at the end, I can tell you my opinion, but not until the very end. You have to listen to it.
Well, I mean, we usually try to do that, except in extreme cases.
Right.
So that makes sense.
I just want you to be able to form your own opinion as we go through this. I also hope that this is a case that people haven't heard of before, because I hadn't heard of it, and it's fun.
I have not, and I love to form opinions. So,
yeah, we're really opinionated people. I think it's fun when we do cases people haven't heard of, so I like doing that. So, let's go to bright and sunny Orlando, Florida, which is where I will be tomorrow. James Robert Ward, who we will call Bob, was a self-made millionaire. He made his wealth in land development and real estate. And he and his family had it made. I mean, they had more money than anybody needs. Like, rich. They had multiple homes across the country. And the home that's in question in today's case is like the pièce de résistance. It's like the Holy Grail. It's this beautiful estate in Isleworth, which in Orlando is a big deal. It's a very exclusive community. It's most known for being the community that Tiger Woods had his famous car accident in, where he was found to be having his affair kind of thing.
Yes.
There are so many rich and famous people that live there. I think Shaq has a house there. I heard that, but didn't fact check it. So, don't take me to the bank on that one. But
yeah. But we get the idea.
Right. So they had a beautiful 8,800 square foot. I'm just going to call it a mansion. It was a mansion.
Yeah.
I mean, it had an elevator, so it was.
I think you can classify it as a
mansion. They had their home there. They had a private plane, which I don't know if they chartered or if they owned it, but they regularly took private flights. They had horses. The girls were in college at like big colleges. They were living it up.
Okay.
Bob had been married to his wife Diane for quite a long time, and they had 2 beautiful daughters, Sarah and Mallory, who were both athletes in college. Growing up, the girls were very close with their father, and one of their daughters had bonded with their mother over horses. Like, they were a really tight-knit family.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was perfect.
Until it wasn't.
Until the Great Recession. So,
yep.
A lot of you know, I'm sure, that in 2008, we had a lovely little real estate market crash. And as I mentioned, Bob and Diane had a lot of their money and a lot of their investments in real estate and land development and all of that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not good for them, of course.
Yeah. The wealthy's loss was people like myself's gain, because that's
Indeed.
when my husband and I could afford to buy our first house because of the recession.
So we're,
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry, Bob. Unfortunately, Bob sat his family down and explained to them that things were probably going to change a little bit. His company had filed for bankruptcy, and then it was announced that Bob and Diane were named in a lawsuit. So basically what had happened was... Bob's company was called Land Resource, and it filed for bankruptcy about a year before the incident, we'll call it. He was being sued by an insurance company that accused him of taking $20 million or more than $20 million from the sale of a lot of subdivisions that he was developing. The buildings were in Tennessee, or where he was building was in Tennessee, and this was all in 2007. The insurance company had issued bonds for the subdivision to be built, and Ward was supposed to be using the money to improve the subdivision or build it. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
But instead, they alleged that he used the money to pay off his personal debts and went on a spending spree. And that's when they are allegedly saying that he bought this 8,800 square foot mansion in Isleworth with this money. They say that they say that he paid off loans of nearly $2.5 million for 2 houses in Georgia, bought another house in Georgia, which was a $750,000 home in Georgia, and that he purchased several vehicles, including a $140,000 Mercedes-Benz sedan.
I just
That's a lot of money. So again, this lawsuit eventually gets dropped because of the kerfuffle. But I love that word so much. You know what other word I've been liking a lot recently?
Hullabaloo.
Yes.
Yes, I've noticed that.
I love that word.
Yeah.
That's goofy. We should bring back funny, silly words like kerfuffle and hullabaloo. Yes. Anyway.
I agree.
Anyway, so that's kind of where they were. That's what they were dealing with. They were going through a bankruptcy case. They were dealing with this lawsuit, and Diane was about to be deposed. That means that they were going to take her deposition. And a deposition is basically asking her questions under oath for a very loosey-goosey definition.
Yeah.
And they can then take those answers to a trial as evidence. Cool.
Yes.
So, like I said, she was going to be deposed soon. And as they got closer and more involved in this lawsuit, Diane's daughters noticed a big change in her. She was increasingly distraught over the prospect of losing their privileged lifestyle that she had grown accustomed to. And despite Bob's optimism that they would land on her feet, she was really struggling with it. She relied heavily on prescription drugs and alcohol, particularly on wine, and she would mix the two. According to Sarah and Mallory, she sometimes got violent when she got drunk. At one point, she threw a suitcase at one of her daughters, and she turned into a completely different person when she was intoxicated.
This is not a...
Go ahead.
Never mind. I shouldn't say it.
Just
no.
between us squirrel friends.
Listen, I say this having lived as a child. I lived in a trailer park. So I feel like it's okay for me to say it, but my brain immediately went to, it sounds like she's preparing to lose all the money and to live in a trailer park. Sounds like she'll fit right in.
So the girls were off at college,
Mm-hmm.
living it up. Like I said, they were both college athletes. One of them played squash. I don't know what the other one did. I'm sorry.
Of course they did.
Right.
Squash.
Yeah. And one night, a 911 operator got the following phone call. Take a listen.
See?
I just saw my wife.
You just what?
I just saw my wife.
Where's your wife?
She's right here on the floor. Please send somebody at 5277 Iowa Country Club Drive.
Okay, what's going on there?
I just shot my wife.
You just shot your wife?
I shot my wife. Yes, please send somebody over.
Where is she breathing?
No, she's dead.
You know that for sure.
I think so, yes.
Okay, sir. Where is the weapon?
It's in the nightstand next to the bed in the master bedroom. And I'll be glad to meet the officers at front door.
Where is your wife, sir?
She's on the floor in the master bedroom.
How old is she?
Born in 1954.
Okay, you're sure she's not breathing or?
She's dead. She's done. I'm sorry.
What in the world?
So
He's so, I mean, like,
he has COPD and GERD, so his voice is very gravelly.
well,
So-
yeah, no, that's not the part that gets me.
I know, I'm just explaining.
The part that gets me, I mean, some of it's the accent, but it's his tone and
Mhm.
inflection was like,
Right.
Mama said, life is like a box of chocolates.
Well, they lived in Atlanta.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but it's the combination of the accent
Right.
coupled with like, it's just so
Right.
like
He was very calm.
calm, but like direct. That's wild.
Yeah. And a lot of people had a lot of problems with that. And
Yeah.
now, allegedly, I couldn't find anything to back this up, but Bob's daughter, Sarah, I'm pretty sure it was Sarah, said that originally Bob accidentally called 411 and not 911. And so when he got the non-emergency line, he had a very normal reaction. He was much more
Yeah. So, okay.
not frantic, but because he's not a frantic guy. He's a very,
Yeah.
but he had a more quote unquote normal reaction, upset
Yeah.
reaction. And then by the time that they were like, okay, you called the wrong number, we need to redirect you. And he got to 911.
He had calmed down.
Right. So again, I couldn't confirm that, but it
Gotcha.
does track for me.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
Regardless, police arrive on scene and they do in fact find a deceased Diane Ward and a Magnum gun sitting on the nightstand. She had been shot in the face one time. Now, the police on the scene, again, they, like he said, he met them out on the porch and they noted how calm he was the whole time. And this is something that they would continue to see over the next few years of this case. He calmly explained that Diane was in the master bedroom. Well, it's kind of weird. He told them it was an accident, and then he eventually because you know how these things are, it's not always the same story right away when you process everything.
Yes.
But eventually what he says is that, and this is, once he says this story, he sticks to it. This is it. He calmly explained to the officers that Diane was in the master bedroom on the floor and that there was nobody else in the home. They took him away in handcuffs because they said that his story wasn't matching up. At first, he said that he shot her over the 911 call, and now he was saying that it was an accident. He explained that he walked into their bedroom to find Diane on his side of the bed, standing up, heavily intoxicated, with his gun in her hand. He would later recall that he knew he had a split second to get the gun away from her before she shot herself or him. And so he took his moment of opportunity, and in the process, the gun went off, shooting Diane in the face and killing her. So the police were upset because, not upset, but like they
Very upset with you,
very
Bob.
upset. They were saying that his story didn't match, so they not arrested, but they took him into police custody
Mhm.
because he said he shot her, and then now he's saying it was an accident, and like it was just kind of weird. So when he gets into police custody, several things kind of happen. At first, he vaguely talks with them, reiterating that it was an accident and kind of reiterating his story, but he does not give a lot of details. And I'll give my opinion as to why, but we'll
Okay.
They ran tests on his skin because he had some red marks and some liquid on the back of his shirt. At one point, he asks the officer who's taking the swabs if it was wine or blood. And she says it might be wine. I think it's wine. It's really pink. They tested his hands for gunshot residue, etc., etc. And some people say that he behaves really callously. Other people say that he's in shock. It's kind of up for interpretation, how you want to think about it. He tells the officers, he says, I'm trying to like kind of semi-quote him because I think it's important that you kind of understand his tone. He's like, I'm going to have to do some damage control with the children. Like my main concern is Mallory and Sarah. So
Yeah.
And then he says, and I think we need to get a lawyer. We need to get my lawyer in here. Like, this was a horrible accident, but we need to get my lawyer in here. Basically.
I mean, yeah. Okay.
Right. And I think the reason that he's so vague is because this is a wealthy man. Wealthy people know to shut up and to talk with their attorneys first. They're not going to be super, and they know.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to come across as uncooperative and make himself look guilty, but at the same time, he's not going to just spill his guts. And yeah.
And he told them what happened, and of course, they're listening to him on a camera, and he calls his family, a couple different people to kind of fill them in and tell them. And at one point, he tells somebody, like, I need you to go take care of the dogs because I'm not going to be able to go home. Like, they're not gonna let me go home. I need you to go take care of our pets. Like, could you go pop by there, whatever? Talking to his sister, and he tells them all it was a horrible, tragic accident. It was an accident. Like, he never once changes it. He calls his sister. He says, I don't know how I'm gonna tell the girls. And his sister, the girl's aunt, ultimately tells the children. The children, they're in their 20s, but
yeah.
When they first heard, at least one of the Ward daughters thought that the crime may have been committed by one of her father's competitors, thinking that these are unprecedented business times for them. They don't really know what's going on. Did somebody come in and shoot mom because of, like, the bankruptcy? Like, what's going on? She never in a million years would have thought that her father was involved in the death of her mother. So the police get a search warrant on the home, and they begin. At the same time, Bob calls his attorney, which is actually his bankruptcy attorney, but that's who he calls first. Which,
I mean,
yeah, fair.
Yeah, I mean, if I had some regular attorney, that would be probably my first go-to.
Right, because they'll
of
get
like,
you.
Who do you recommend? Who
Right.
do you know that's a good attorney?
Right. And I work with some bankruptcy cases, and they touch elbows with these really big other attorneys. So,
Yeah.
makes sense. So he's talking with his attorney. The police get the search warrant on the home, and they start. And they were in the home for a long time. I heard reports of several weeks, and during that time, they allegedly did some interesting things in the home. Allegedly. These have not been proven in a court of law.
Okay.
Time-stamped. The investigators or police or whoever, the crime scene, whoever was in the house, rented porn on their television.
What?
Yep. They stole jewelry, thousands of dollars of jewelry. They stole purses. They stole shoes. They also stole cash from the home. So the daughters say, they're like, we can't prove this because nobody's gonna, like, we can't prove it. But my mom kept up to $10,000 in cash with her. She traveled a lot. It was a convenience thing rather than dealing with banks. She always had a ton, like way too much. They said, we don't understand why she keeps so much cash. It's not necessary. It's stupid. It's not safe. They know all of that, but it doesn't change the fact that it's true. Their mom kept upwards of $10,000 in her purse at all times. Like, she had that much cash with her.
Oh my God.
And that was gone. So, like, we know they stole so much stuff. Like, we had the jewelry appraised. So we went through with their insurance company. We told them what was missing. Like, we know that stuff was stolen.
Wow.
But they didn't care, really. I mean, that's not really what they care about right now. They took a hammer to the grill outside. They trashed the house. They broke the elevator. Like, this house was destroyed. And they said that they did it all in the name of looking for drugs in the home, but there was no indication to support that there were any drugs involved in the case other than the drugs, the prescription drugs that Diane was prescribed and was abusing. So I don't really know why they would do that, but again, allegedly, they got back to the home a few weeks later and it was trashed. The thing that frustrated me the most was that they wouldn't let their animals be released. So they had 4 dogs, a cat, and a parrot in this house.
Okay.
And at one point they were like, hey, the girls were trying to come home from college. They were stuck. They hadn't gotten to Orlando yet. And they were like, hey, we have a friend who's coming to pick up the dogs. And they were like, no, they can't be released to you. So they had all of these.
Why? Are you scared
I don't know.
You scared they put drugs
in the dog?
In the dog?
I don't know. So they wouldn't let the dogs or the animals be released to their friend. They wouldn't let them be released to the family. The friend was able to like put eyes on the dog through the garage, I guess.
So who's taking care of these dogs?
I guess the investigators. I don't know. And again, this is alleged because I'm hearing all of this from, I believe that it's Sarah.
Okay. One of the daughters.
They look really similar. So it, anyway.
It's one of the daughters.
One of the daughters. So, and again, wasn't proven. I'm just telling you what I heard.
Yeah. Okay.
And it doesn't really get brought up in the trial because they didn't find any substantial evidence that really would have pointed to anything worthwhile of them saying like, well, didn't matter because the investigation was horrible.
You didn't find any drugs in the dog's butt.
Right. There were no drugs in the dog's butt. What they did find was stuff that they already knew, which was that Diane had been drinking heavily and there was a broken glass and there was wine. There were a bunch of empty wine bottles and we already knew that. So, yeah. Thoughts, feelings while I get some water?
I don't know. This is wild.
Now, we have a long legal battle ahead. So let's get into the evidence presented by the prosecution because they have decided they are going to charge Bob with the murder of his wife.
I figured.
They don't believe his story that it was an accident. They think that he shot her because of her deposition coming up. They thought that for some reason she was going to be a liability for this case. And they also speculated that he was going to benefit from her death via a life insurance policy.
Okay.
The prosecution relied heavily on Bob's words during the 911 call, his calm demeanor in police custody, and the fact that there was some evidence that could have potentially pointed to a fight prior to her being shot. There were wine stains, broken glass, and the prosecution alleged that the wine glass had been thrown at Diane by Bob in a fit of rage. The defense brings some tangible evidence to the table, looking at the fingerprints on the gun and looking at the gunshot residue. So, like I said, they ran testing on his hands. There was no gunshot residue on Bob's hands at all. The only fingerprints that were remotely on the trigger were Diane's, and Bob's fingerprints were only on the barrel of the gun, which would match with the story of him wresting the gun away from her and accidentally being shot in the kerfuffle.
Yeah.
He placed the gun at the bedside table, holding it by the barrel, which would explain his fingerprints there. That's what the defense says. Both of his daughters testified, coming to his aid, saying their father would never hurt their mother, along with a myriad of other witnesses and experts over, the trial.
Right.
In 2011, the jury took 12 hours to deliberate over 2 days, requesting forms like transcripts, other, various things from the case. They wanted at some point, they asked for an unloaded version of the gun, and they came back with a guilty verdict, convicting Bob Ward of second-degree murder with a potential life sentence.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, he does appeal, and it takes a while, but eventually he does get somewhere, with the judge overturning his case with the basis of improper counsel and incompetent attorneys. Because of this, he was allowed to go home with his daughters briefly. The prosecution, however, insisted on retrying him for his wife's death. They are determined that he shot her.
I'm at a loss. Okay.
We'll talk about, I think we'll talk about why at the end.
Okay.
His defense attorneys this time focused on the amount of drugs and alcohol in Diane's system at the time of the crime, the fact that the gunshot residue was, again, not on Bob's hands, but on Diane's, and a myriad of other things. I like that word today, myriad.
Myriad.
At the end, the jury believed that he accidentally killed his wife, but still found him guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
That's more what I expected.
Yes. Now, things are about to get spicier.
Oh boy.
Prior to his sentencing hearing, his attorneys pushed for him to be sentenced to time served, considering that he had already served 6 years in jail. They cited the fact that he was getting up there in age and he had a bunch of health issues, and they were hoping that the judge would sentence him to either the shortest possible sentence, which was 124.4 months, which I think is like 10 years.
Okay.
Or they were really hoping that he would be able to use his time served
Yeah.
for a manslaughter charge.
Yeah.
In the process of waiting on the sentencing, the family hired an estate professional to help them move their mother's belongings out of one of their Atlanta homes, which also fascinating job. Like, when I say estate professional, I mean this woman's entire job was like taking dead people's things and like helping people sort through sentimental value and like sort through their stuff.
Yeah.
It's a cool job.
It would be a very interesting job.
Very emotional, I think, but it would be good.
Yeah.
So it had been several years at this point, almost 9 years, I think, since their mom's death, and they hired this woman to help them process and move through everything. In Diane's belongings, this estate professional found a suicide note. Allegedly a suicide note. I'm going to read it to you so you'll know what I'm talking about. Now,
Okay.
granted, the note was in their Atlanta home, not in Orlando.
Yeah.
They don't know for sure when it was written. But the girls believe that this proves their mother's intentions, as they think it was written around the same time period of her death. And they have several handwriting experts prove that, yes, Diane wrote this. It's on Diane's stationery. It says Diane Ward at the top, but they looked at a ton of handwriting samples. Because this is a Florida case and I have access to the Florida docket, I mean, everybody does. It's public record. I went through and I looked at what the handwriting expert looked at. I went down a rabbit hole. It was really interesting. But it was clearly her writing.
Mm-hmm.
And the note reads, "Dear Mallory and Sarah, please know how much I love you. I don't know how it happened for me to end up like this. I want you to have wonderful lives, and I know that I will always watch out for you both. Take care of Daddy. I love you more than you will ever know. Take care of the dogs. They will need you." I mean, that's a suicide note.
Yeah.
That's a suicide note.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
That's just sad.
Yeah. So they entered this into evidence hoping that it would matter when the sentencing time came. Because like I said, the jury had already convicted him of manslaughter, but they were awaiting sentencing.
Yeah.
Diane's family is still coming to Bob Ward's defense after 2 of his convictions. Her sister, Paula, testified that they were trying to get the judge to be like, yes, you can go stay at home while you await sentencing rather than going back to jail. Right. They were like, he's not a flight risk. He's never been a flight risk. And she says, not only can he come stay with me at my home in Camden County, Georgia, I will verify that he will stay with me, but I will also put my house up for collateral because at this point in time, he's now broke. Like, he doesn't have much money, according to his attorneys. The prosecution doesn't believe that. He says, I think the question of the day is, what's he actually worth? What corporations does he actually control? Who knows? Your Honor, we're asking you to deny the request. Well, he can't control many organizations from jail, but whatever.
Not directly, anyway.
So the judge did not let him go home. And one of the prosecuting attorneys on the case, I think it was an associate. I don't think it was like the prosecuting attorney. But he was fired because he was caught sending inappropriate texts to one of the Ward daughters.
Oh, Lord.
Now, I didn't look super far into this, but I don't think that it went both ways. It wasn't like that. I think that they were talking about something completely different, and he said, you're just saying that to see me naked or something like that. And it was a whole thing, and he did get fired because of that. Because why would you do that, you idiot? But again, didn't get a chance to look too far into it.
Okay. Nobody wants to hear that tangent.
Yeah. Not yeah. I was just saying that and then you said that. Anyway, the judge came back with sentencing, and Bob Ward was sentenced to 30 years in prison for manslaughter in his wife's killing in June of 2018. The judge also ordered for Ward to reimburse the state for the cost of his incarceration, ruling that he pay $50 per day in restitution, which is a total of $547,500, excluding leap days.
Excluding leap days.
He will get credit for the 6 years he's already served in his 30-year sentence. The judge declined the request to release him from the Orange County Jail on bond while he appeals his manslaughter conviction. And the judge said, quote, "He has now been convicted twice of killing his wife and has little to lose by fleeing." That's what she called it. That's what she said.
This is wild. I don't know what to think of this.
Right. Let's talk about it. So I tried to present the case as neutral, but as I'm reading it, I'm realizing that it does kind of sound biased in the sense that it sounds like I don't think he shot her intentionally. And I'll go on record. I don't think he did. I don't think that he murdered his wife. I think that it was an accident. I think he's telling the truth.
Well, I mean, how else would you explain that the only...
Right.
For me, it's the gun stuff. Like,
right.
I get that you would question if he did it intentionally and that he might look like he has motive, but how would he have put her finger on the trigger and only his handprint is on the thing and he has no gun residue? I don't know. That doesn't...
Right.
And I'm not an expert, though.
The family says that first of all, there was no life insurance policy. So there was nothing to gain. That was a thing that they assumed. But the life insurance policy hadn't been getting paid, so it had been canceled because they were going bankrupt.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything there. And the daughters say, well, Diane didn't know anything about the business, so her being deposed really wasn't going to make or break anything. So they also said, I've heard them say in a couple different interviews that like their dad wasn't super concerned. Like, yeah, he knew they were going to be broke, but he knew they were going to be fine. They were going to be happy. Like, it wasn't going to matter. It wasn't bothering him. It was bothering Diane. In my opinion, this case is a combination of a couple things. I mentioned at the beginning that it got tried in the same court as Casey Anthony, pretty close to Casey Anthony. And this case may have had a different outcome if it had been in a different time and place, because I think people were concerned, especially the jury was concerned about giving a not guilty verdict after Casey Anthony was given a not guilty verdict and seeing how the public reacted to that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. You know, it was also a really highly publicized case at the time, and they originally were trying to paint the family out as really spoiled, as, you know, this rich family, this rich man shot his wife, and it was a trial by media first before he actually was tried. And so I think that after Casey Anthony, they were a little bit concerned about rendering a verdict of not guilty. Now, I was not on the jury. I'm not going to pretend to know what the jurors thought. Just know that that is my objective opinion.
I don't disagree with your opinion, honestly. Because what would be the point? Like,
I don't know. People were put off by his behavior. They were put off by the fact that he was like joking around with his daughters in the courtroom, that he...
Oh, well, that's just a stupid thing to do.
Well, he was just being a dad. Like,
No, I understand. Like, he's just being... But you are on trial, so...
Right. Well,
maybe don't be yourself too much.
I don't even know if it was necessarily in the courtroom. I know that like the story that comes to mind is they were talking to him in jail, and they were telling him like, we put money in your account, and one of the daughters says, so you can buy bras and stuff. He says, oh yeah, you know, I'll love that. Like,
yeah,
like they're making jokes with him, and you know, it just really stands out to me that nobody in Diane's family thinks that he shot her.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody thinks that it was an accident, except for
Even if
the juries.
even if his daughters were on his side and believed him
Right.
innocent, but her family was like, we don't know because they've had these problems. Or,
Right.
we don't know about this. I might lean towards, well, I don't know. But
Right.
from the sound of it.
Right. And so now that we're talking about opinions, I'll talk about, I'm always scared to share my opinion, but I'll share my opinion on this. In hindsight, after the fact, the daughters have done interviews, and they, especially in this 2018 conviction, I think it was Mallory that had an outburst in the courtroom, screaming like, she tried to kill my dad, and now my dad's going to jail for killing her. Like, this is ridiculous, because they think that it could have been going that direction, that she was that intoxicated. Yeah. She had taken a lethal dose of her antidepressants and drank 4 bottles of wine that night. They found 4 empty bottles of wine.
Yeah.
And so the daughters were basically like, she was going to die anyway. And now we're also losing our father in this process. And a lot of people were very turned off by their phrasing of that, of her saying like, well, she was going to die anyway, and now we're losing our dad. And like, they were very put off.
I feel like people who get put off by stuff like that have never actually experienced or lived with any of those things. They've never
Right.
really experienced what it's like to live with somebody who is in active addiction,
Right.
and acting out, and how toxic it can be and how it wears you down.
Right. And regardless, I think it may just be a personality thing. And like, when she said it didn't faze me at all. I was just like, oh no, I get what you're saying. Now you're losing your dad. And
yeah,
to me, I don't think that that's being cold. I think it's just being
they've
realistic.
accepted the reality of it, is what it sounds like to me.
Right.
They accepted the reality that their mom was likely trying to kill herself with the pills and alcohol, not necessarily the gun. Maybe she was going to use the gun, or maybe she picked up the gun because she was mad at him and like, I'll take you out with me. Who knows? We don't know.
And that is upsetting. And so I was fascinated by this case because I read the headline, Florida millionaire kills wife. I was like, well, tell me more. And then I just fell down this rabbit hole and looking at these like handwriting experts and all these people. And he's at Zephyr Hills Correctional Facility, still serving time. It's interesting for sure. I hate this case. I like it, but it's just...
it's interesting. I'm always interested in cases that...
Right. I don't think I would have been so upset by the manslaughter conviction if it didn't have such a heavy sentence on it, when I truly do think that it was an accident.
After he served 6 years, I was thinking like, okay, well, if you don't feel comfortable saying not guilty, say guilty, and then he served 6 years. So like, he's done or almost done.
Right.
If you count time served. And while that still sucks, if indeed it was an accident, like, what's done is done. And
right. It also sucks because the family wasn't pushing for the prosecution to go after him. They didn't want this. The prosecution decided this. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with the time and the circumstances,
and
of
perception of the public,
this area at that time, which I understand. After I've done a lot of research on the Casey Anthony trial, you won't catch us talking about it. We're not going to cover it.
Other than to say it happened.
And this was the outcome, because we don't want to get sued. But I can totally see how they wouldn't want to be caught in a situation similar.
I can't get over the house. Like, the house being
trashed.
Is one thing if you're searching for stuff, but stuff being stolen and the pornography thing is too much for me.
Even one of the daughters was just like, I guess you're there late at night killing time, but like, don't do it on our TV.
Did you do that in front of the dogs?
Did you do it in front of the parrot? Like,
can you imagine if
oh no,
if they came in and the parrot started like,
this isn't a beach, it's
bow,
a bathtub.
chicka, wow, wow.
The parrot just going, this isn't a beach, it's a bathtub. I'm not a lifeguard. Help, I'm stuck.
No. Ugh. Terrible. Okay.
Oh my gosh. So that is the Bob Ward story. I have your opinions.
Yeah.
I have mine. And I this is the other thing I wanted to say. I know that this has kind of been rambly at the end, but it's a lot of opinions. I tried so hard to find unbiased sources because they was either he killed his wife in cold blood or he's completely innocent.
Yeah.
He did nothing. It's like you can't find something in between. So please know that I did my best to find and read both sides of everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm going to have all my sources listed because I went through a lot. I have a lot of them listed, but I went through a lot, and there's a couple that I'm not going to list because I didn't use anything from them because they were so biased one way or the other.
Yeah.
But just know that I tried to give it to you as plainly as possible.
Fair.
So whatever your opinion is after this, you can probably go on that.
And share. Let us know.
Yes. So let's do this. I think the emoji should be a parrot.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think. I just think that it should be a parrot. I just think that's funny.
Yeah.
But if you want to let us know what you think, feel free. You can do it in comments. You can message us. You can do whatever. If you want to hear some of the tangents that Elysia cut out about her talking to a door-to-door salesman, you can check us out on Patreon. This episode is coming out halfway through February, which means we are gearing up for our February live stream. Woot woot.
On Patreon.
On Patreon. So if you're interested in that, check us out there.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, we always appreciate the reviews, ratings, etc. on Apple and Spotify, especially because those are the two big guys.
Yes.
It helps us a lot.
I wanted to say, and this is not in self-promotion, we had a hate comment a couple weeks ago on a YouTube video, and they called our music sexy, and I think they meant it in like a derogatory way, but I am taking that in full confidence. We have very sexy music, so
sexy.
I'm too sexy for my music.
They didn't, in fairness though, that person did not realize that we aren't like a news podcast. We're a podcast. So once they were corrected by a very nice, and if you're listening, if you're the person who came to our defense on that, like, shout out to you. That warmed our hearts so much. You don't have a name on your
YouTube primary account, or we would have shouted you out, but you know, it's just a series of letters and numbers, so we didn't do that.
Because you did it in a very like specific way without like name calling or being overly hateful.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And we appreciate that. But yeah, that person who initially was like hating on us, they changed their tune very quickly once they were corrected and they understood the difference that we are not a news podcast. We do present facts, but we are going to give commentary and such. So.
Right. And thanks for calling our music sexy. For those of you who don't know, who haven't been listening for a long time, I'm sure we've talked about it. It took Elysia and I forever to pick music. And finding it, I was so happy. And thank you for calling it sexy. I think it's pretty sexy too. Schmuxy. I think that is all. We hope you guys enjoyed.
Yeah. Till next time.
Till next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.